I never imagined that accepting my grandson's invitation to live with him would lead me to uncover the most horrifying secret I'd ever witnessed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Margaret, and I'm 68 years old. My husband Thomas passed away 2 years ago from a sudden heart attack, and since then, I'd been living alone in our modest home in Ohio. The loneliness was crushing. The silence in that house, once filled with Thomas's laughter and our conversations, became unbearable. So when my grandson Daniel called and asked if I'd like to move in with him and his wife Rebecca in their home in upstate New York, I jumped at the chance. Daniel had always been my favorite. Maybe that's terrible to admit, but it's true. He was my late daughter Sarah's only child, and after she died when he was 12, I helped raise him. We had a bond that felt unbreakable. He'd grown into a successful investment banker, married a beautiful woman named Rebecca, and they lived in a gorgeous Victorian house on the outskirts of Albany. They had 2 children, Emma, who was 6, and little Thomas, 4 years old and named after my late husband. The thought of being surrounded by family again, of hearing children's laughter, made my heart soar. I moved in on a crisp October morning. The house was even more beautiful than the photos Daniel had sent. 3 stories of classic Victorian architecture, with a wraparound porch and a peaked roof. Rebecca greeted me warmly, hugging me and calling me Grandma Margaret. The children were shy at first, but Emma warmed up quickly, showing me her room and her collection of stuffed animals. The first few weeks were wonderful. I helped with the children, cooked meals, and felt useful again. Daniel worked long hours at his firm, often leaving before dawn and returning after dinner. Rebecca seemed to work from home, always on her laptop in the study. She was pleasant enough, though I noticed she was a bit controlling about the house. Certain rooms were off limits. The basement, she said, was full of old junk and dangerous items. The attic was the same, just storage, and probably mice. I didn't think much of it. After all, it was their home. But then, about 3 weeks after I moved in, I started noticing something odd. Every night, like clockwork at 3 in the morning, I'd wake up to the sound of footsteps above my bedroom. My room was on the 2nd floor, and the only thing above me was the attic. The footsteps were soft but distinct. They'd last for about 10 minutes, then stop. Sometimes I'd hear what sounded like a door closing, then silence. At first, I thought maybe it was just the old house settling. Victorian homes make all sorts of noises, but the pattern was too consistent. Every single night at 3 a.m. Like clockwork. One morning at breakfast, I casually mentioned it to Rebecca. "Oh, that's probably just Daniel," she said quickly, not looking up from her phone. "He's been having trouble sleeping lately. Stress from work. He sometimes goes up to the attic to do some organizing. It helps him clear his mind." That seemed odd. Why would someone organize an attic at 3 in the morning? But I didn't push it. I didn't want to seem like a nosy grandmother. But the footsteps continued. Night after night. 3 a.m. Exactly. And then I started noticing other things. Rebecca would make an extra portion of dinner every night, but when I asked who it was for, she'd say it was leftovers for Daniel's lunch the next day. But I'd seen Daniel's lunch, the one he took to work. It was always the sandwich I made him in the morning. I started paying closer attention. Every evening around 10 p.m., Rebecca would excuse herself and go to the kitchen. She'd prepare a tray with food, medicine bottles, and a glass of water. When I asked what she was doing, she'd say she was taking her vitamins and a snack to bed because she got hungry at night. But why the tray? Why the multiple medicine bottles? Then there was the grocery shopping. Rebecca bought massive quantities of adult diapers. When I asked about it, she laughed and said they were for her elderly aunt who lived in a nursing home in Syracuse, and it was cheaper to buy in bulk and bring them to her. But we never visited any aunt in Syracuse. The pieces weren't adding up. One night, I couldn't sleep. The footsteps above had woken me at 3 a.m., as usual. But this time, I decided to investigate. I quietly got out of bed, put on my robe, and tiptoed into the hallway. The house was dark and silent except for the creaking above my head. I stood at the bottom of the attic stairs. They were steep and narrow, disappearing up into darkness. My heart was pounding. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but something deep in my gut told me that something was very, very wrong in this house. I climbed the stairs slowly, one at a time, trying to keep them from creaking. At the top was a door. It was closed, but I could see light seeping out from underneath. And I could hear something. A voice. No, voices. Rebecca was talking to someone. I pressed my ear against the door. "I know you're tired," Rebecca was saying, her voice cold and clinical, "but you need to eat. If you don't eat, you'll get sick. And if you get sick, well, that would complicate things." Another voice responded, weak and raspy. "Please, Rebecca, please just let me go. I won't tell anyone. I promise. Just let me see daylight again. Please." "You know I can't do that, Mother," Rebecca said, and I heard the sound of a spoon clinking against a bowl. "Now open your mouth." "Mother?" My blood ran cold. Rebecca's mother had died 3 years ago. At least, that's what Rebecca had told everyone. There had been a funeral. I hadn't attended because I didn't know Rebecca well at the time, but Daniel had gone. He'd told me about it. Heart attack, they said. Sudden and tragic. But if Rebecca's mother was dead, who was in that attic? I heard footsteps approaching the door and I panicked. I rushed back down the attic stairs as quietly as I could and hurried to my bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. My hands were shaking. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I climbed into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin, trying to slow my breathing. A few minutes later, I heard Rebecca's footsteps pass by my door and continue down the hall to the master bedroom. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning at breakfast, I watched Rebecca carefully. She was cheerful, making pancakes for the kids, kissing Daniel goodbye as he left for work. She seemed so normal. So nice. But I knew what I'd heard. I needed to know more. I needed to see what was in that attic. That afternoon, when Rebecca left to pick up Emma from school and Thomas was napping, I made my move. I climbed those attic stairs again, my heart in my throat. The door at the top was locked. Of course it was. But I'd been picking locks since I was a teenager. My older brother taught me as a party trick. I never thought I'd actually use the skill for something like this. I went to my room, grabbed a bobby pin, and returned to the attic door. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't do it, but after about 5 minutes of fumbling, I heard the click. The door swung open. The smell hit me first. It was sterile, like a hospital, mixed with something else, something human. The attic had been converted into a room. There was a hospital bed in the corner, an IV stand, a small portable toilet, and a table with medical supplies. The windows had been covered with blackout curtains, and a single lamp provided dim light. And in the bed was a woman. She was skeletal, her hair gray and matted, her skin pale as paper. She looked like she was in her 70s, though she was probably younger. When she saw me, her eyes widened in terror. "Please," she whispered, her voice the same raspy voice I'd heard the night before. "Please don't hurt me." "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, rushing to her bedside. "Who are you?" I'm Linda," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm Rebecca's mother." But Rebecca said you died 3 years ago." Linda let out a broken laugh. "She wishes I had. She told everyone I was dead so she could collect the life insurance. $250,000. That's what my life was worth to her." I felt sick. "How long have you been up here?" 3 years, Linda whispered. 3 years in this room. Rebecca and Daniel, they told everyone I died. They had a funeral with an empty casket. They collected the insurance money, and they've kept me here ever since. Why? Why would they do this? "Money," Linda said bitterly. "I also have a pension. Every month, my pension check comes. Rebecca forges my signature and cashes it. And there's my house, my savings account, everything. As long as I'm alive, she can keep taking it all. But if people knew I was alive, she'd have to give back the insurance money. She'd go to jail. So she keeps me here, alive but dead to the world." "Dear God," I breathed. "What about Daniel? Does he—" "Daniel knows," Linda said, and my heart shattered. "He's been part of it from the beginning. He helped Rebecca move me here in the middle of the night. He helps keep the secret. My grandson, my sweet Daniel, a monster. I need to get you out of here," I said, standing up. "I need to call the police." "No," Linda grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "You can't. Not yet. Rebecca checks my vitals with an app on her phone. There's a monitor under my mattress that tracks my heart rate and breathing. If she sees that I'm agitated or that someone's here, she'll know. And if she knows you know, she'll kill us both. She told me she would. She said if anyone ever found out, she'd make it look like you had a heart attack, just like your husband. The mention of Thomas made my blood boil. But I knew Linda was right. I couldn't just call 911. I needed a plan. Okay, I said, forcing myself to calm down. Okay, I'll figure something out. But I promise you, Linda, I'm going to get you out of here. She squeezed my hand, tears running down her face. Thank you. God bless you. I locked the attic door behind me and went back to my room. I sat on my bed, my mind racing. I needed evidence, lots of it. I needed to document everything before I went to the police, because without proof, it would just be my word against Rebecca and Daniel's, and they seemed like such a perfect couple. Who would believe me? That night, I pretended everything was normal. I had dinner with the family, helped give the kids a bath, read them bedtime stories. The whole time, Daniel and Rebecca smiled at me, thanked me for my help, told me how happy they were to have me there. They were excellent actors. After everyone went to bed, I waited until midnight, then snuck back up to the attic. Linda was awake, staring at the ceiling. I need to document everything, I told her quietly. Can you tell me exactly what happened? Everything you remember? For the next 2 hours, Linda told me her story, how she'd been living alone after her husband died, how Rebecca had convinced her to add Rebecca's name to her bank accounts just in case something happened, how one day, Rebecca and Daniel had invited her for dinner and drugged her coffee, how she'd woken up in this attic, and how Rebecca had calmly explained the plan, how they'd staged her death, forged documents, collected the insurance. I recorded everything on my phone. I took photos of the room, of Linda's ID that Rebecca had carelessly left in a drawer, of the medical equipment. I photographed the forged signature on the pension checks that Rebecca kept in a file cabinet. Every night for the next week, I gathered evidence. I created a hidden folder on my phone and backed everything up to the cloud. I wrote down dates, times, every detail I could remember. But I also knew I needed to be smart about the rescue itself. I couldn't just grab Linda and run. She was too weak to walk. She needed medical attention immediately. And I needed to make sure Rebecca and Daniel couldn't run before the police arrived. I spent my days researching online while Rebecca was busy with the kids. I learned about how to properly collect evidence for court. I made copies of financial documents I found in Daniel's study. I discovered that Daniel had used part of the insurance money to make a down payment on this very house. More evidence. The hardest part was acting normal, smiling at Rebecca, hugging Daniel, playing with the kids, knowing their parents were capable of such evil. 2 weeks after I first discovered Linda, I was ready. I'd made contact with a detective at the Albany Police Department, a woman named Detective Sarah Morrison. I'd sent her everything, all the evidence, anonymously at first. Then I'd called her from a burner phone I'd bought at Walmart. I'm ready to testify, I told her. But you need to coordinate the rescue perfectly. Rebecca monitors Linda's vitals remotely. If she suspects anything, she might hurt Linda or destroy evidence. Detective Morrison was professional and calm. We worked out a plan. It had to happen on a Saturday morning, when Daniel would be home but distracted. I would keep him and Rebecca busy downstairs while police surrounded the house. The Saturday came. I woke up early, my stomach in knots. This was it. At exactly 9 a.m., I made a special breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, eggs, the works. I called everyone to the kitchen, including the kids. I wanted to thank you all for letting me live here, I said, serving up the food. You've made me feel so loved and welcome. I thought we could have a nice family breakfast together. Rebecca smiled at me. That's so sweet, Margaret. You're such a blessing to this family. I wanted to vomit. At exactly 9:15, there was a knock at the door, loud and authoritative. Albany Police, open up! Daniel's face went white. Rebecca dropped her fork. What's going on? Daniel said, standing up. I pulled the children close to me. It's okay, sweeties. Everything's going to be okay. The front door burst open. Detective Morrison entered with 6 other officers, guns drawn. Daniel Thompson and Rebecca Thompson, You're under arrest for kidnapping, fraud, and attempted murder." Rebecca looked at me, her face twisted with rage. "You," she hissed. "You did this." "I did what was right," I said calmly. "Unlike you." The children started crying. I held them tight, covering their eyes as their parents were handcuffed and read their rights. Other officers were already rushing upstairs to the attic. Within minutes, paramedics were bringing Linda down on a stretcher. She was crying, but she was smiling too. As they carried her past, she reached out and squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my life." The aftermath was chaos. The press descended on the story. The headlines screamed about the daughter who faked her mother's death for insurance money, about the investment banker and his wife who kept a woman prisoner for 3 years. Daniel and Rebecca both went to trial. The evidence was overwhelming. Daniel got 25 years. Rebecca got 30. They'd both be old by the time they got out, if they lived that long. The insurance company sued to recover the money. The house was sold to pay back debts. Linda's pension and savings were returned to her. Linda spent 2 months in the hospital, recovering from 3 years of malnutrition and muscle atrophy, but she was a fighter. Slowly, she got stronger. As for Emma and Thomas, my great-grandchildren, the courts awarded custody to Linda and me jointly. Linda was their grandmother, and despite everything, they deserved to know her, and I was their great-grandmother. We were the only family they had left now. It wasn't easy. The children needed therapy. They asked about their parents constantly, and we had to figure out how to explain that Mommy and Daddy had done something very bad and had to go away for a long time. But kids are resilient, and with love, patience, and consistency, they began to heal. Linda and I bought a small house together in a quiet suburb. Nothing fancy, just a simple 3-bedroom ranch with a yard where the kids could play. Linda and I split the bills, shared the parenting duties, and slowly became friends. She told me stories about Rebecca's childhood, trying to understand how her daughter could have turned into such a monster. I told her about Daniel, about the sweet boy he used to be, and how greed and a bad marriage had corrupted him. We both grieved for the children our children could have been, but we also celebrated the children we were raising now. Emma started to smile again. Thomas began sleeping through the night. They called Linda, Grandma Linda, and me Great-Grandma Maggie. They drew pictures of our new house and their new life. 6 months after the trial, I was sitting in the backyard watching Emma push Thomas on the swing set we'd installed. Linda came out with 2 glasses of lemonade and sat down beside me. "I never thanked you properly," she said quietly. "You don't need to thank me," I replied. "Yes, I do. You saved my life, Margaret. If you hadn't come to that house, if you hadn't listened to your instincts, if you hadn't been brave enough to investigate, I'd still be in that attic. Or worse, I'd be dead." Rebecca was getting tired of me. I could tell. She'd started making comments about how much easier things would be if I just passed away naturally. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Well, you're here now. You're safe. And those kids are safe. That's what matters." "You know what the detective told me?" Linda said. She said that in all her years on the force, she'd never seen someone your age gather evidence so thoroughly and carefully. She said you could have been a detective yourself. I laughed. Well, I watch a lot of crime shows. But truthfully, it wasn't about being clever or brave. It was about doing what was right. It was about protecting the innocent and making sure evil didn't win. A few months ago, I received a letter from Daniel. He wanted to see the kids. He was sorry, he said. He'd made terrible mistakes. He wanted a chance to make things right. I didn't respond. Some mistakes are too big to forgive. Some actions are too evil to explain away with apologies. Emma and Thomas will make their own decisions about their father when they're older. But for now, Linda and I will protect them. We'll give them the childhood they deserve. We'll teach them about honesty, integrity, and doing the right thing even when it's hard. Last week was Emma's 7th birthday. We threw a party in the backyard with all her school friends. As I watched her laughing and opening presents, I thought about that morning when I heard footsteps in the attic, about the choice I made to investigate instead of ignore. That choice saved a life. That choice gave these children a future. Sometimes I still wake up at 3 a.m., old habits dying hard, but instead of hearing footsteps above me, I hear silence, peaceful, blessed silence. And I sleep soundly knowing that I did everything I could to bring light into the darkness. That I chose to be brave when it would have been easier to look away. That's the story of how I saved Linda's life. But in many ways, saving her saved me too. After Thomas died, I felt lost and purposeless. But this experience reminded me that even at 68, even when you think your life is winding down, you can still make a difference. You can still be a hero. And that's a lesson I hope to pass on to Emma and Thomas as they grow. That no matter how old you are, no matter how powerless you might feel, if you have courage and determination, you can change someone's world. You can save a life. You can make evil answer for its crimes. And you can sleep peacefully at night, knowing you did the right thing.